Hey everyone, we've got a really cool episode here for you today on the SysAdmin DOJO Podcast. We've got April Dunnam from Microsoft coming on to talk to us about the Power Platform. So we talk about all kinds of components inside this platform. We're going to talk about Power BI, Power Automate, virtual agents, and lots more. Coming up next on the SysAdmin DOJO Podcast. Well, everyone, welcome back for another episode of the SysAdmin DOJO Podcast, the podcast designed to help you become the kick-ass system administrator inside your organization. As always, your host, my name is Andy Serwich, and with me I've got April Dunnam from Microsoft. How's it going?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing good, doing good. Hey, I'm really excited about today's episode. I'm really happy that you've come on to talk about the Power Platform with us. So now, this is a topic I get really excited about because it does so many cool things, but before I run away with the topic, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Microsoft?
Yeah, so I work on our advocacy organization and I lead the Power Platform advocacy team. So I have advocates for all different kinds of technologies like .NET, JavaScript, you name it. And so I'm kind of in charge of leading the Power Platform side of things. And I've been using the Power Platform for many years now, since about they came out. And before I joined Microsoft, I was a Microsoft MVP in the Power Platform. And
Nice.
so I did a lot in the low code space, but then also come from a traditional development background, doing lots of C#, .NET, and SharePoint development back in the day too.
You know, that's an interesting background for Power Platform because and you said one of them, the terms that you always hear in Microsoft's marketing around Power Platform is low code, no code, right? So typically, the way I see it, at least in the trenches in the community, is people coming from at the Power Platform from the perspective of like process automation or something like that. People that don't necessarily have any coding background. So I imagine it has to be interesting looking at it from the other side, right? Having this traditional C# knowledge and all the other languages that you know, and then kind of looking at the low code, no code. So I imagine it makes things easier, but I guess my point being, it just probably makes things interesting, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's just, I just see it as another tool in the tool belt of solving the end goal of, building solutions. And
Right.
It's definitely interesting just to see some of the similarities, but then some of the different patterns and the way you kind of have to shift your thinking on some things when doing a low code approach versus like a traditional development approach. But that's one of the things I personally love about the Power Platform, is how extensible it is. And you can be a traditional developer and, build in the tools that you're used to and integrate with low code technology.
Yeah, it's really neat. And I've seen a lot of examples, I guess, over the last couple of years. And I'm sure we'll get into some examples as we kind of talk through our bit for today. But, I have seen examples where you've got an organization where they've got somebody working on process automation, maybe somebody that doesn't necessarily have any developer knowledge, right? But they're an information, I guess I would say, key stakeholder for a particular part of the business. So they take their knowledge and do what they can with the no code and low code tools. And maybe, I think it's quite common, and I'm sure you see this all the time, they'll actually partner with some sort of internal development team to kind of, I don't know, give that Power App a little bit of extra flair or make it work a little bit differently. It's probably, the platform was really designed for that, right? To kind of fit in that space, I think.
Yeah, totally. And that whole concept of what you just described there with, the people that are familiar with the business process, bringing in, looping in IT pros and developers is kind of what we've tagged that as fusion development and fusion development teams. So the concept of bringing these different stakeholders and people from different backgrounds working together for the common goal of building the business solution. So yeah, seeing a lot of that, and that's really where low code shines. And you might have heard some of the stats out there about low code and how we don't have enough pro devs to be able to build all the applications, and we need 500 million new apps that are going to be built in the next 5 years. So how do we solve that? Well, we need to use some kind of low code technology to be able to accelerate how fast we can build these solutions and integrate that in there. So fusion teams and that whole development model is going to be increasingly important over the years as we try to bridge that app development gap.
I think that's really cool. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about, in that, there's not enough developers to go around, right? And then, looking at it also from a internal IT and just an internal organization standpoint, if I'm a 1,000 person manufacturer, for example, there's going to be processes inside that organization that IT is going to know nothing about, right? And I've always said the joke that, when you work in IT, the expectation is that if it plugs into the wall, you support it, right? So that's
Yeah.
always been the expectation. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat down at, a user's workstation, let's say the CFO, right? And they want me to get Great Plains or Dynamics working. And then they have questions about how Dynamics or Great Plains works. And I'm like, no, that's you. I know nothing. You don't want me doing accounting. That's all you, And I mean, I think what my point here is, and where I'm going with this is pairing that IT knowledge with that process expert, the person that actually knows that part of the business is just, I think that's something we've been missing in IT for all these years, right? And again, that's another reason why I'm so excited to do this episode, because I just think it's such an interesting combination of, those business processes with tech, right? And looking at my outline for today, I wanted to talk about what the Power Platform is. I think we've already kind of given a pretty good definition of kind of what it does and where it fits, but it's really broken down into a couple of key different tools, right? You've got Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and virtual agents. Can you give us just kind of a quick summary of what each of those is and kind of what the use case for them is? I guess we can start with Power BI, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So Power BI is what I want to start with because it's kind of the oldest product I think available in the Power Platform. So that's really solves the need to have intelligent dashboard and reporting. And how can we do that again in a low code way? So that's what Power BI solves. If you know Excel and you can do pivot tables and things like that in Excel and manipulate your data, and Power or used to Power Query, right? Power BI is a really simple tool to get started with to build those dashboards, reporting, and analytics side of things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like you said, that's kind of the one that's been out there the longest, right? And I mean, I've seen some really cool stuff from Power BI, just interesting statistics and business applications. The one that always stands out to me is a couple years ago at Microsoft Ignite. I don't remember which one. They all blend together after a while, but I think during the keynote, they actually demoed something from Power BI where there was an organization providing rentable bicycles in, I want to say it was Madrid, maybe. I don't remember the city. Brisbane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically they used Power BI to kind of show the data in a couple of different ways. There was a map view and a couple of graphs that just kind of showed that, hey, these locations over here don't get as much usage. The bicycles aren't rented as often as the ones over here. And it helped them, they took that information to help them balance the rental stations so that their bicycles were more effectively used, right? So I just thought that was a neat use case for Power BI. So
yeah, there's all kinds of different use cases, and the really cool thing about it is how seamlessly all the different products work together. So you can integrate Power BI with the workflow piece, with the application pieces, and embed apps inside of Power BI to do more. So that's what we can do with the integration amongst the different products.
Right. Very cool. And you mentioned the other apps. Power Apps is the next one I have on my list. Can you give us a quick rundown on Power Apps?
Yeah, so Power Apps, that's kind of how I got started with the Power Platform, and building on that is I was doing a lot of InfoPath forms in the day, and I saw this thing called, it was Project Sienna, like way early on before it even had a name of Power Apps. And I saw that it could kind of do a lot of the stuff that I was having to do with these InfoPath forms that some of my clients had built, and I was having to try to fix and repair. So what it does is it gives us a way to build mobile and desktop applications. And all we have to know to build that is it has a very simple kind of what you see is what you get interface, similar to maybe how we would build out a PowerPoint presentation, being able to drag and drop different shapes and icons and text input controls and various controls and kind of build our application that way. And the logic layer being very based off of the Excel formula language. So we have this quote unquote formula language called PowerFX for building Power Apps applications.
Okay.
So we can build these apps that will work seamlessly through a player that we have on our mobile and tablet devices. But we can also build these and use these on our desktop. And we have various flavors even. So Power Apps is a huge topic because we have different varieties of apps we can create. We can do something that's called a canvas application, which is really giving us a blank canvas to kind of pixel perfectly defined how we want the application to be laid out. But we also have model-driven applications, which kind of go back to the Dynamics days of being able to start with your data, and it will build out, an application for you kind of to like administer, say, your backend data to be able to see your tables and your columns and all that. And then we even have something called portals, which is taking the concept of being able to build a public-facing website with low-code tech, with Power Apps, and having a back end of that with Dataverse, which is kind of the underlying data model and platform for the Power Platform.
Gotcha. So it sounds like this is the component that really you're taking all the different pieces and bringing them together to allow, this is the piece that allows those subject matter experts to create the apps in a low-code, no-code fashion. So
exactly, it's your front end app development platform, basically for the Power Platform. Yeah.
Very cool. So then the next one on the list is the one that I'm most familiar with, and that's Power Automate. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is the app that was at one point in time called Flow, right?
Yeah, the artist formerly known as Microsoft Flow. Yeah,
right.
Yep. Now it's Power Automate. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you give us a rundown on that one? I mean, this may not be a perfect comparison, but I imagine this is probably most often compared with Zapier, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's probably one of the competitors there to it. I really think it's the glue that kind of binds all the Power Platform products together, because it's what enables the workflow automation.
Right.
So there's really lots to unpack with Power Automate because it can do so much. We have the concept of cloud flow. So it has, say, a built-in approval engine. What's a common piece of the pie when we're building business solutions? Well, we usually need some kind of intelligent automation, some kind of approval process. So that's kind of baked in. We have the concept of robotic process automation built in because we have a product called Power Automate Desktop, where we can go beyond automating, say, stuff in the cloud and SaaS services to automating, stuff, legacy applications and things on the desktop. And we even have things built into Power Automate like a process advisor. So we were talking earlier about, one of the problems being how do we identify and really get the business requirements and even know which processes to automate and where the bottlenecks are in the processes. We have a thing called Process Advisor as part of Power Automate that will analyze the processes for us using some of the recorder technology. So and it can do business process flows, lots of things that it can do to really add in the automation piece to our business processes.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is kind of the engine that drives the whole thing, right? So, okay. Nice. Okay. So then the one component here that I'm not familiar with is virtual agents. That's the one that I when I was putting this outline together, I'm like, virtual agents, what's that? So can you run through that one for us? I'm interested in this one.
Yeah, so that's the newest piece of the Power Platform that was added recently. So this is solving the need for how do we have intelligent chatbots and virtual agents, and how do we enable the development of those in a low-code way. So that's the gap that Power Virtual Agents is solving, or also known as PVA. Because as we know, I'm sure we've all interacted with a bot at some point. We see they're kind of becoming increasingly prevalent.
Right.
Sometimes a preferred way to interact, you might not need an app just to check on the status of an order, right? You might not want to have to go interact with the user interface. Maybe you just need to ask the question, give me an update on my order status. That's a perfect fit for a bot. And that's what PVA does, is allow us to build out any type of bot, like whether it's a knowledge base, like an order status update, thing like that. We can automate that with PVA.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it seems like you can't go through any support experience without interacting with a bot in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes they're really helpful, right? Because like you said, I just want to know, hey, where's my package at? Or, how's my order coming out, right? Just something simple like that. That's very cool. So nice to see that that's being integrated into the platform as well. So that covers like the main components of the Power Platform. And so our listeners on this show primarily come from the system admin space, right? So infrastructure engineers, the folks that are in the trenches, setting up servers, managing servers, helping with help desk tickets, that type of thing. And one thing I really wanted to do on this particular episode is kind of convey the value of the Power Platform for sysadmins, because what I've seen in my experience is I feel like some system admins think that Power Platform is just this kind of tool over here that, maybe somebody wants to use, but it's another thing I have to worry about keeping my hands wrapped around and managing. And what I perceive is that there's a lot of system admins that don't realize the value that's there and how enabling their workforce to use it could actually make their jobs easier, right? Now that's really kind of what I wanted to get into as the core part of this episode. And I guess the question that it boils down to is, if I'm a system admin, what problem does the Power Platform solve for me on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. So essentially, what we're doing if we embrace the Power Platform is we're enabling app automation and innovation within our orgs, but we're able to do that in a secure way, because with the Power Platform, it's backed by Azure. It's part of the Microsoft Cloud, right? So we have all the benefits that we get from being able to utilize Azure Active Directory and all the compliance features that are baked in flow down into the Power Platform and the solutions you build. So, night and day difference of if you're having to manage the same thing with custom code, right? We have so many features baked into it that just make the deployment of applications easy, for example. So that's another area here that might be a problem it could solve. Deploying these are seamless. Like we're constantly innovating here too. I think at Ignite last year, one of the key things that was announced was the ability to easily distribute the Power Apps Canvas applications that we build using through Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So we can build those, we can put those into some of the native app stores there as well. So, I mean, constant innovations, I mean, it's secured within a particular tenant as well. We can package those up. Has encryption built in, all the things that you have to check and you have to account for when you're enabling and you're trying to govern and manage applications is built in. It supports Intune file level encryption to enhance data encryption already there. I mean, like it supports single sign-on. I can keep going on and on. Conditional access policies even through Azure AD and data loss prevention policies. So it kind of has built in all the things that you would need to check off for applications that you're trying to manage in an environment.
See, that's nice because, you've said a lot of the key words that me as a system administrator, I'm kind of perking my head up because I'm like, wait, it works with conditional access. And the thing that really stood out to me was you said you could actually roll out these Power Apps using Endpoint Manager, correct? I'm just making sure I heard that correctly. See, that's
a new feature there. So traditionally, when we built Power Apps, it was just kind of confined within our tenant, and we had to run in the context of the Power Apps application on the device. But that was one of the new features where we can actually integrate it with Endpoint Manager, roll them out that way, and not just Endpoint Manager, other MDM solutions as well it's compatible with. And so we can deploy those through like private app stores like the Microsoft App Center and Apple's equivalent, things like that.
So that's super cool because, I'm a 20 plus year system admin, and I remember the days when like, hey, I've got this application that I need to get to 2,000 endpoints, right? Like, now you're looking at things like, okay, PowerShell scripts, or if you go way back, you're looking at, like Kickstart scripts or, batch scripts or group policy. And it was just a pain, right? It was just a pain. Yep. So being able to do this through Endpoint Manager to me is really cool, right? So so you have a knowledge expert in your organization, use Power Apps to create this app that's, whoever the app is for within the organization, a subset or the entire company, you have a way to distribute that to your organization, which is great. Okay, so that kind of talks a little bit about what problem it solves for me, the system admin. Now, I think the next question here is probably a larger question, and it's a real broad question, I know, but I think this is really where the Power Platform was. What it was really designed for, and what is the problem that it solves for my end users, right?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, the problem that we're talking about earlier. We don't have enough developers to meet all the app demand. There's constantly different line of business applications. There's that need to be developed. There's just old school, like if people still using paper forms, right?
Right.
That needs to be automated. So you can believe it or not, that's still a thing. And pretty rampant, especially in certain industries more than others. So
Yes.
It's really, gives us a way to put the power in the end user's hands, or the people that are familiar with the process or have the process that they want automated and that they need to solve the problem for, puts the power in their hands to actually take action and build something. And ideally partnering with an extended team, obviously, to get that developed. So it gives them a way, using the skills they already have. We usually all work with the word suite, and we know Excel, PowerPoint. So kind of eases the burden from development teams and their backlog, and puts the power in the hands of the people that need the processes automated to kind of take action on that.
Nice. And the other thing that I've noticed in my time working with the Power Platform and M365 as a whole over the last couple of years is, I feel like Power Platform is one of those unsung heroes of M365, and that, when an organization migrates to Microsoft 365, they get email, chat, maybe SharePoint and OneDrive, and then they call it good. They're like, we're fine. That's all we want. But really, there's so many organizations, they don't take the next step to be like, hey, I've got an E3 or an E5 license or whatever they have. They don't take the time to actually look at that and be like, hey, what am I paying for? There's not many of them that say, wait, the Power Platform, what is this thing? And what I've found is that, those really mature IT organizations that are out there, both internal, and you see this in the MSP and the CSP space a little bit as well, those more mature organizations will take the time to point Power Platform and those other features in the M365 stack and say, hey, there's these cool tools here, teach them how to use it, and then they realize additional value out of the investment that they've made into the M365 platform as well, right? So yeah, that's one thing that kind of sticks out to me as well, is, roping in these services and teaching your end users and your knowledge experts how to use it. You can kind of become the hero within your IT organization, right? Yep. And helping your company realize additional value. So
yeah, I mean, you're already paying for the services in most cases, right? Like you said, if you have an E3 and E5, you already have access to the Power Platform. So why not just let everyone in your organization know that it's available, train them up on how to use it. And then also, if you're using Windows 10, 11, you get Power Automate Desktop, a version of that included as well. So it's kind of a shame not to leverage all the tools that you have access to.
Exactly. And the other thing I've noticed is, one Power App often turns into 2 and 4 and 8. And it's like, once an organization sees that value from a single Power App, they usually multiply, right? So I'm sure you guys see that on your end too. So, which brings me to my next point, and that is management, right? So if I'm a IT pro and I'm, implementing this within my organization, like I said, often it starts scaling up as, it starts seeing some success within the organization. How do I keep my hands wrapped around this? So the big thing that comes to mind is things like permissions and those end users having access to the data that their Power Apps are having to pull from, and things like API access. Is there anything you could tell us about kind of how to keep our hands wrapped around this?
Yeah, so I think for one, it's important to understand kind of how permissions and access and everything works in the Power Platform. So what we do is we have the concept of something called environments. And an environment, all it is a logical security and data boundary that you can configure, and you can have multiple environments in your tenants for Power Platform assets. So that's where they're essentially kind of like containers, basically, that you can set up. So we get a default environment when we have the necessary licensing, like the E3, C5. We get access to a default environment, which is intended for personal productivity and testing of apps, and then we can create as many other environments as we'd like. So you see lots of different environment strategies. We can use these in a traditional app development sense for dev, test, and production environments and moving code in between. But we can also use them for like geo-targeted environments and even departmental targeted environments, because each environment can have its own special permissions. So we can limit access to an environment, say to a particular security group, for example. But then we can get even more granular with that. So maybe we have an environment for everyone in marketing, but maybe we want to get granular to where, we have a particular database inside of a Dataverse database there in that environment. And we can get even like row level security granular.
Okay.
To that, and configure with security profiles that we have and things that we can configure within Dataverse and the environment permissions there. So lots that we could do. And then as well, when we're talking about API access, you mentioned that. So when we talk about like what is in it for me and like what does the Power Platform give me, well, we have access to over 600 different connectors. And the connector is just a wrapper around an API. So that means we have over 600 different first and third party services that we can connect to, in addition to being able to make our own connectors to services that we might be using internally in internal APIs.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah. So as you can imagine, though, like the question then would come up, well, how do I secure those APIs, right? What are the options that we have available there? Because we wouldn't want people mixing, matching, sensitive data from one of our APIs and like sending that out on social media or whatever it might be. So we have, not only do we have all the auditing and security through M365 security and compliance, but we have an admin center for the Power Platform where we can configure our own special data loss prevention policies so that we can say, for this particular API/connector, I can either completely disable it, or we can get even more granular and say, only disable certain actions that connector does. So if we don't want to block a connector completely, like we don't want to block Twitter, we just don't want people sending tweets, we can just block the send tweet action and allow them to read tweets and maybe do sentiment analysis or whatever they're wanting to do with that. So lots that we offer there from a security and data access. And we have documentation too that kind of walks you through all the policies and things that we offer.
Nice. Okay. I imagine that's out on Microsoft Docs somewhere, I'm sure, right?
For sure, yeah. If you just go to aka.ms/Power Platform Security, that's kind of the one-stop shop of all the info you need.
Gotcha. Okay. And then for those listening, I'll be sure to get that into the show notes. It might be underneath or above, somewhere around this piece of content. You'll see the link to that as well. So yeah, the last kind of question in terms of these features that I wanted to touch base on is, as the IT pro, how can I help my users get the most of it? So let's say my users are now aware of this, they're using it. Are there any resources, I guess, for me to provide them that can help them be more successful in using the Power Platform?
Yeah, I would say like if we're talking about the ideal implementation of the Power Platform, you would start early before you even roll it out with a clear environment strategy of like how you want to handle that and what set up your DLP policies and understand what kind of policies you want in place. But then also start early with setting up and establishing a center of excellence. So we have resources available to kind of guide you through that with the Center of Excellence toolkit that we offer.
Okay.
So it really kind of walks you through creating a nurturing environment for your makers for building solutions. So making sure that they're really clear and they know what environments you have, what security measures are in place for that environment so that they know which connectors, APIs they can and cannot use within a given environment, and what security groups have access to that. But then also the resources they need to build best practices for building apps. So maybe having a common repository for approved themes to use and color codes and stuff like that in your applications, to all the way to giving you a way as the admin to manage what apps are even being created. So there's proactive alerts you can set up using the Power Platform's own products like Power Automate to send you daily alerts on a new app was created, and maybe requiring kind of like a proof of evidence of like what is the need for this application so that you can kind of govern and manage the apps that are being built and make sure there's no duplication going on. So it kind of has everything baked in addition to what's already included in the admin center, kind of extends with the Power Platform's own products, what's included to give you kind of a holistic solution for governing and for nurturing a healthy Power Platform environment.
Nice. I love the advice, because there's so many organizations I've seen throughout the years that, hey, there's this cool new thing, let's go do it. And then, there's no governance around it. And before you know it, you've got, 200 Power Apps out there. Half of them do the same thing, So I love the advice on like, hey, come up with your center of excellence, figure out what your standards are going to be, right? How you're going to, Yes, so much that. Very much agree with it. So very cool.
It'll save you a headache in the long run, yes.
Definitely.
You do the extra work up front.
Definitely, yes. Well, April, one thing I kind of want to wrap up with is, if our listeners have any follow-up questions, where can they reach you at?
Yeah, several ways to reach me. I'm very active on Twitter, so if you just search for April Dunnam, you can find me on there. I'm also active on LinkedIn, so just search for my name again, April Dunnam, and you can reach out either one of those. And I also have a YouTube channel with different concepts as well about like the DLP policies, like we talked about today. And so if you have a specific question about that, I answer comments on there too. So lots of different ways that you can reach out.
Very cool. And I'll be sure to get those again. I'll be sure to get those resources linked into the show documents or documentation show notes. There we go. That's the word I was thinking of. Yeah, get that into the show notes as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to look up April and send the questions her way and get you an answer, it sounds like. So, well, April, I appreciate you coming on and talking with us about the Power Platform today. Like I said, I was really excited about recording this one just because it's such an interesting topic, and I think there's a lot of value here for IT pros. So really appreciate your time.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. Always happy to talk about the Power Platform.
Yeah, sounds good. And those of you watching, thanks for checking out our episode today. As always, you can go out to the Altero Dojo, www.altero.com/dojo, and we got a number of different sections out there for you to check out. Like this. This episode kind of centers around M365 and some of the tools that you get inside of that licensing. We also have sections for VMware, Hyper-V. We got some Azure content out there, MSP-focused content, backup and DR. It's getting easier to say what we don't cover than what we do cover these days. So be sure to check that out. So I've got some links in the show notes to that material as well. Other than that, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Hey everyone, it's Andy again. Hey, thanks for watching the episode today. Hope you enjoyed it. One thing I wanted to leave you with, we've been talking a lot about Azure Stack HCI, Hyper-V, hybrid cloud, and a lot of the recent episodes. Wanted to let you know that on March 23rd, we are running a webinar that talks about all things Azure Stack HCI and hybrid cloud. Now, you can register for that webinar by clicking on the link in the description of this episode. And if you're watching or listening to this episode after March 23rd, you can use that same link to watch the webinar on demand. So hope you enjoy it. Again, we hope to see you for a future episode of the podcast. Have a great day.